Okay, today's video is on averages or central tendencies. You should know these as mean, median, mode. You know you've been over them before. You may not know them as being called central tendencies. The reason we call them that is because what you're finding when you're finding mean, median, mode is you're trying to find one number that kind of represents about the middle or the central of your group of numbers, your data. And so we call it a central tendency. These are all different types of averages, basically. Okay? I know most people, when they say the word average, are actually talking about finding the mean. Okay? But mean is just one type of average. The mean is where you find the sum, or you add all the numbers in a data set together, and then you divide by however many numbers there are in the data set. So when somebody is talking about finding the average, this is generally what they're talking about, but it's actually only one type of average. There are two other types of averages that we use. One is the median, and that's the middle number when the data are put in order. The most important part about that is that the data have to be in order. If you don't put them in order first, you're not going to get the right answer. Okay? Now there's another part of this that says if there are two in the middle, then you find their mean. So if my data set has an even amount of numbers, then I'll end up with 2 in the middle. And when that happens, I'm going to find their mean. I'm going to add the two numbers together and divide by 2. And that's what I'll use for the median in that case. The mode is probably the easiest one to find. It's just the number that shows up the most. So you just look through your data set, see how many times each of them appear, and that's your mode. Okay? You do not have to have a mode. If all the numbers show up once, then there's no mode, and that's what you would write as no mode. You can have more than one mode. If there are a couple numbers that show up more than any others, then you would say those are the mode. So mode it's easy to find, but it can be a lot of different things. And then when we're doing mean, median, and mode, we always put range in there. Range is just the difference, which means you're subtracting between the highest and the lowest numbers in the data set. So the reason we include this when we're talking about mean, median, mode is because it affects especially the mean. If I have a really big range, I have a couple of numbers that are really far out as opposed to the rest, that's going to have an effect on my mean. And that tells me when I have a big range in a small data set, the mean may not be the best central tendency to use to describe it. And so that's why the range is important for these. So let's go ahead and do a couple example problems here of finding mean, median, and mode. We have a group of numbers here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different numbers here. So let's start by finding the mean. So the mean is going to be when I add all these up. And then after I add all those up, I'm going to divide them all by how many numbers there were in the data set, which we counted up. There were 8 different numbers in the data set. So I'll divide that whole thing by 8. Now, to make this quick, I'm just going to pull up the calculator here, and I will add all these together. So I have 14 plus 11 plus 17 plus 12, 15, 12, 13, and 10. And so that gives me 104. So now I have 104 divided by 8. And when I do that, I get 13. So the mean for this data set is going to be 13. Now, let's work on median and mode and range. We'll do median next. If I want to find the median, remember the most important thing was to get them in order first. So when I look at these numbers up here, see the smallest one's going to be 10. So start with that. Next is going to be 11. Then I have two 12s. I have a 13, 14, a 15, and a 17. And let me double check I got them all. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So yes, I have all of them. So we said the median is the one that's in the middle. So what I'm going to do to find the middle number is I'm just going to, I like to start at the ends, and I cross off the ends, and I work my way in to the center so I can figure out what the middle number is. So there's the two ones on the end. This is the next two in. The next two in are the 12 and the 14. And so I see that I've got two of them in the middle now, 12 and 13. So we said when there's two in the middle, we're going to find their mean. In other words, I'm going to do 12 plus 13 divided by 2. And that's just going to be 25 divided by 2, which is 12.5. And so my median for this data set is 12.5. Okay. Now let's try to find the mode. This again, this should be probably the easiest one. In order to find mode, I just need to figure out which one shows up the most. So now I look at this data set and see I've got a 14, that's only one. I've only got one 11, 117 there. I have two different 12s. I have 115, 113, and 110. So the only one that shows up more than once is 12, and so that will be my mode. That shows up more often than the rest. So my mode down here is 12. Now let's find the range. This one's pretty easy too. All I need to look for is the highest number and the lowest number. So if I can use where I put them in order, that's the easiest. The highest was 17, the lowest was 10, so I'm just going to subtract those two numbers. I'm going to subtract 17 minus 10, so my range is going to be 7. That's it. That's how I find all four of them. Now, we're talking about how the range, the bigger it is for a small group of data, tells you that, maybe mean's not the best central tendency to use to describe that data. And so what you need to remember is there's 3 central tendencies. There's 3 different averages. They can all be used to describe the data. So this data set, the numbers are already in order. There are 10 numbers up here. So if I start crossing out from the ends, working my way in, then I can see that I'm going to end up with 2 in the middle because I had an even number of numbers in my set. So 2 in the middle are 7 and 8. So in order to find the median, I'm going to do 7 plus 8 divided by 2, which will give me 15 divided by 2, or 7.5. Okay? I can also find my mean, where I'll add all of these up. 1 plus 1 is 2, and another 2 will give me 4. Plus 7 is 11, and another 7 is 18, and 8 is 26, and 9 is 35, and 10 is 45, 55, 65. So I'm going to have 65 divided by 10, which is going to be just 6.5. So there's my mean. And then I can also find the mode here, the other average, which in this case, since I have 2 1s, a 2, 2 7s, an 8, a 9, and 3 10s. And so 10 only shows up 3 times. That's my mode. So let's suppose that this data was the ratings that people had given a video game. And let's say you can see by just looking at the data that for the most part, people definitely liked this game. Out of 10 people, 7 of them rated it 7, 8, 9, or 10, which is pretty good. But because there is a couple, the 1, 2 1s, and the 2, that were so much lower than the rest, the mean is only 6.5, which is actually below the majority of the data. So even though we had 10 numbers, the range would be 10 minus 1 or 9. That's kind of a big range for only 10 numbers. And so when all of them are kind of grouped at the top and only a couple down here, that kind of throws off the mean a little bit and makes it look too low. So now if I'm trying to sell this video game, this is not going to look good for a rating. It has a rating of 6.5, even though most people thought it was better than a 6.5. So in that case, mean is not a good central tendency to use to describe this. Median would probably be the most fair to describe this data set. It is up in this group. So that would probably be the most fair, but if I'm trying to sell this, then I want the best one, which in this case is the mode. So if I'm making a commercial, I could say, hey, look at this video game. We had a bunch of people rate this video game. It's rated on average 10 out of 10. Well, when most people hear that, they think, oh, average, it must be the mean. No, it's not. It's the mode. But people don't know that because it doesn't say, it just says the average, and mode is one of the averages. So that's something you always got to be careful for when you're looking at those ads that you see rating movies and games and shows and stuff. But that's how you find mean, median, and mode, and that's what it is used for.